Dr. Carole, say hi to Karen Turk if you can.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, Dr. Carole. How are you? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Just talk about what's happening. I'm Dr. Carole. I'm sure you've been very busy this week, and Karen already addressed it in the first hour. But with the Chauvin trial and everything else, what do you notice is coming out majorly in the headlines today?
Well, I think what Bear's talking about is the lesson we need to learn from the Chauvin trial, and that is that juries from high-profile trials need to be sequestered from day one, because there is no way that this jury was able to make come to a fair verdict when they knew that there were crowds gathering and that there was already, some eruptions all over the United States awaiting the verdict. And that if the verdict was anything less than guilty on all counts, that cities all over the US were going to be erupting in violence. And then, of course, we had Maxine Waters, who added fuel to the fire. And then we had the shootings of Dante Wright and the shootings of Adam Toledo, and then Biden put his 2 cents in. Of course, theoretically the jury was sequestered when Biden spoke, but still, all of this shows that if you're a jury member, one of the things that I do, I'm a forensic psychiatrist and I'm a jury consultant and so on. And one of the things that they normally, when we saw from their only spending 10 hours in deliberating, that they already had their minds made up before they went into that room. They didn't ask to see anything again or hear anything again. And so that was a sign that really they came in with their emotions, with their minds made up. And that shouldn't happen. Everybody, I'm not saying that he shouldn't have gotten found guilty of anything. God forbid, things will erupt all over the US, right? But I am saying that everybody deserves a fair trial.
Yeah, Dr. Lieberman, you made some really good points there, and everybody does deserve a fair trial. And it's hard to believe that, we're now in this sort of state of America where I feel like, you can't have that expectation anymore. And I'm not just referring to this case. It just seems like, we're in an environment now where we're assuming guilt over innocence when somebody goes to trial, and that's a very sad state to be in. I've really enjoyed filling in for John Tobacco today, and I'm going to turn things over to you for the second hour. And really good to see you on Liquid Lunch. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
All right, great. So thank you, Karen. You were wonderful.
Thanks.
I appreciate it. I know it was a last minute call, so you stepped in.
Thank you.
Pinch hitter, appreciate
Happy to do it. Thanks so much.
Great. All right, Dr. Carole. So we have a few guests coming up in this hour, and we're going to speak to an Army chaplain, and then we have the Mix It Up segment with David Eisenbach against a Republican strategist. But if you could just say hello to our viewers and talk to them maybe about what's important in this country right now, especially after what happened with the Chauvin decision a couple days ago.
Okay. Well, first of all, as I was saying, we need to learn lessons from this verdict, a verdict that will most likely be appealed. Even the judge himself said that there are grounds for appeal. He said that after Maxine Waters told people that they should be more confrontational. In addition to that, we need to look at this whole issue of how there are race wars going on. Anyone who, we were once saying we're worried there are going to be race wars. There are race wars. What do you call it when people sitting outside in New York and others, not just New York, Pennsylvania, lots of other cities get harassed while they're eating dinner outside the restaurant by BLM people, activists, and of course the war on the cops. There is the war on police, and that it's such a vicious cycle. What's so sad about this is that the more people, racism comes from fear, comes from being afraid, and when we become afraid of people who don't look like us when we're threatened by them. And so this is really having the opposite outcome of what people would like to believe, would want. Of course we want racial equality, and we want, I don't want there to be any question about that. There shouldn't be racism. And my dog agrees with me. And so
Sound effects.
yeah, so he starts now, right? He agrees with me. Anyhow, there shouldn't be racism, of course, but this is not the way to end it. This is really just fueling it. And there has to be more done to stop it. And that comes from voting in leaders who aren't going to rabble rouse and who are going to enact things and say things that don't add fuel to the fire. Now, I guess we should be having at this time, should I be going to my first guest?
Yeah,
I guess.
it's not admitted yet. We're just waiting. Just while we wait, what about police reform? How do you think that's going to change how a police officer is going to arrest them?
Okay. Police reform. I have a very strong suggestion for that. I've been trying to get this message known that what we need, first of all, yes, there are some bad apples, but most of the police are dedicated to keeping us safe. And we are going to need that more and more. There is more crime, more killings, more, mass shootings and so on. So this is not the time to defund the police. This is a time when we need more police, better trained police, and so on. And the way that we can root out the bad apples, or not even, there are some bad apples, people who come in with these racist ideas. I'm not going to deny that, but that's a very small percentage. But most of the police who act in ways that are inappropriate are doing so because they have seen they've been in the force usually for years, and they have seen so much violence that they are suffering from PTSD. And so my suggestion for that is that every 1 to 2 to 3 years, depending upon the financial ability of the particular police precinct, is to have these police come in for a psychiatric evaluation to see whether their mental state is going to be okay. So, they get certified on their weapons every 1 to 2 to 3 years. They need to be certified on their mental health. And that would weed out people who have PTSD, who are going to be more fearful and therefore shoot more quickly. And again, this is part of what's happening because of there being so many attacks this past year on police, so many killings of police. The police are actually reasonable in thinking that their life is at stake. Now,
What kind of animal is that? Why don't you tell our viewers?
Maybe I should bring him into the show the viewers. He's an adorable little poodle. And
yeah, sure. This is nothing like live Facebook TV.
Yes, there we go. Mizu. Say hello.
Say hi.
Say hello to the people. Say hi. Hi. Say, why are you making this noise at this particular time? I need to analyze you. Did you not have a good childhood?
There is a story out there about a lot of people going back to work and leaving their rescue pets back at home, and anxiety and all that. So,
Yes, well,
we do have David. We have Chaplain David Gimana on.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Okay.
And here he is, I think. Hey, David, are you in? It's connecting audio right now.
Okay.
Yeah, but while we wait.
And in the meantime, let me just reintroduce myself. I'm Dr. Carole Lieberman, America's psychiatrist, in today for John Tobacco. And I am pleased to be here. And this was rather late. Just kind of found out about this. So
that makes it more fun, right?
Yes, it does, actually. I like challenges.
So Colonel David Giamona, and I should be able to pronounce this since my last name is Italian. I apologize, Chaplain.
No problem.
So you're here to talk about the troops being pulled out of Afghanistan, and I'm sure there's a lot of families in the United States that have soldiers over there that are really curious about what's been going on. We first heard April. Now it's 9/11, which could be insulting to some 9/11 families. But anyway, Dr. Carole, take over.
Hi, welcome to the show. This is U.S. Army Chaplain Colonel David Giamona.
Yes, absolutely.
And he is the author of The Military Guide to Armageddon, Battle-Tested Strategies to Prepare Your Life and Soul for the End Times. And there I can see better. Okay. Welcome to the show. Yes, this is quite a new, perhaps not unexpected, but a new development that Biden is going to be taking the troops out. And I mean, I know that President Trump had planned to do that, but I would have felt a lot more comfortable with Trump's pullout.
Yes.
Because it wouldn't have been, it would have been a lot more careful than I anticipate Biden's pullout to be. So why don't you tell us what you think?
Well, I did serve in Afghanistan, and I know the area very well. And when the United States leadership changes every 4 or 8 years, the countries of the world know this. They understand that we're not going to keep all the arrangements we previously promised them. And so there's not a lot of trust in our government, whoever the president may be, but especially Joe Biden, because in the 47 plus years of his, life and political, he's never made a good decision about these kinds of things, and probably never will. But the fact of the matter is this: when we pull out, we're going to leave a vacuum. The terrorists are going to come back in, and they're going to start planning to attack region of the world, including us. So, that in itself should signal that if we pull off, we had better make some plans to keep monitoring the situation and understand exactly what's going on, or we're going to find ourselves in a world of hurt again.
Yes. And what do you think about the fact that Obama is really pulling Biden's strings, and that Obama made us more unsafe to terrorists than any president in the whole history of the United States? Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Well, I served under Obama his entire term, and he made it a social engineering playground, not a military killing machine. And what I mean by this, so many things were going on in the military. We weren't focused on the warfighting efforts. We were focused on his social agenda of, bringing transgenders and everything else into the military. Well, when you do that kind of thing, you weaken your military, and then the money, he never put the kind of money that's needed into beefing up our military. Trump came back and did all of those things and left the military very strong, as opposed to being weak as it was under Obama. So all those things being said, Biden is following in the footsteps of Obama. Obama is in the background, of course, pulling the strings, as you said. And, the countries of the world, not just Afghanistan, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, they look at the weakness of our leadership and the vacuum that's left, and they're going to raise up. We could be again at the very brink of global war. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist or want to scare people, but that's exactly where we are right now in the world scene. And it's a very dangerous time to be living.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because I totally agree with you. Actually, I'm a born and bred New Yorker. And after 9/11, I decided to devote, and have continued to devote, a portion of my work to helping people cope with 9/11, the memories that are still affecting us today, and cope with the ongoing threat of terrorism. And so I call myself the terrorist therapist. And I do a radio show where I where I do a What's Hot in Terrorism for that week. And so I've been following this, very closely. And as you know, and can talk about, and as you mentioned, actually, the terrorists even though we've been focused on the pandemic and on politics and all of that. And meanwhile, terrorists they haven't forgotten about us. They are still planning on killing us, taking over the West, all of that. And people, but most people in America have, we're not, terrorists. Wait a second, what's that? They're not that we should be not, and I'm sure you're saying the same thing, not that people should now run and hide under their covers, but we do need to wake up and prepare.
Oh, that's why we wrote the book, The Military Guide to Armageddon. It's battle-tested strategies to prepare your life and soul for the end times. We're definitely living there. And in the last show with John, I was talking about this very thing. Preparedness is extremely important. And having been in New York yourself and lived through all these things, you understand that New York is a hot spot, for all the global terrorists to come and to make their mark. So preparedness, and we go through every chapter, and at the end we talk about physical preparedness. We should have all those things on hand in case of all the disasters that may strike us, natural disasters included. So with all that being said, the terrorists have not gone away. They're still planning our demise. We still have to have a strong border, strong military, and if without those things, we won't have a country. So, I'm very much with what you're in sync with what you're saying. And, Russia has over 100,000 troops on the border of Ukraine. Turkey and Iran are planning the demise of most of the Middle East. They want to take it over, including Israel. Iran, that's why they want nuclear weapons. So on and on it goes. We live in a very, very hostile, dangerous world. And if we don't have strong leadership, strong military, strong presence, and our faith being strong, we are going to meet our demise sooner than later.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. And
we have about a minute or so. So I don't know if you want to get to Russia.
There's so much. Okay, there is so much. We could talk forever, actually, because what you're saying is so very important. And again, the name of the book is called The Military Guide to Armageddon, Battle-Tested Strategies to Prepare Your Life and Soul for the End at Times. And we're not just talking about duct tape, right?
Exactly.
You're not just telling people to get duct tape. Remember when that was the solution? Well,
absolutely.
Thank you so much, Army Chaplain Colonel David Giammona. There we go.
Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate your time. Thank you for having me on the show today.
Very welcome.
Fantastic, both of you so far.
Thank you.
So next we have our Mix It Up segment with David Eisenbeck and a Republican strategist, Brian Trassler. He's been on before as a guest Mix It Up host. So I'm going to admit David Eisenbeck first. Okay, Dr. Carole?
Okay, sure. I don't, you'll have to give me the other name again. I just have David Eisenbeck, but fine. It's fine.
So David is being admitted.
Hi, David.
Hey, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm Dr. Carole. I'm sitting in for John Tobacco today.
Good to meet you.
On Liquid Lunch. And nice to meet you. This is David Eisenbeck, who is a historian and a professor at Columbia University. And which of these Mix It Up segments are you going to be talking about? The Super League or the gas emissions or Governor Cuomo?
We'll talk about
the above.
Yeah, we start with the Super League.
Okay, sure. So tell us, it's for Americans, that's all a bit foreign. Get it? Foreign.
Right. Right.
So tell us about it.
So here's a case where, actually the fans win. Standing up to these global elites. You got these American owners like John Henry, who also owns the Boston Red Sox. He owns Liverpool. You got the Glazer family, Manchester United, collaborating with oil money from Abu Dhabi that own other teams to create this Super League, which was meant to be catering to a global elite, totally turning their back on the traditions and the history of these English soccer clubs founded by working class factory workers located in certain neighborhoods and certain cities with a long tradition of family and location and history, throwing it completely out the window to create what was just a money grab funded by JP Morgan. Fortunately, the fans stood up, said, we're not going for it, and the global elite backed down. So it's one of those cases where the good guys actually won.
Well, it's any day when the global elite back down is a good day.
That's right.
When you say that they were doing this for the global elite, do you mean were they going to have matches that were going to be much more expensive? The tickets were going to be more expensive?
Well, think about this. If you're one of those soccer teams that is part of this Super League in England, your away games are over in Italy and in France. So who's going to be able to go buy that ticket? Okay.
Yes.
And so it's like completely turning your back on your fans, the people who have supported your club for a century, right? These are very old teams. They go way, way back. So that you could now market yourself to Americans, the Chinese, so that you can create all these new streaming services, betting apps, all about bringing in the cash. And a guy like John Henry, an American, he doesn't care about the people of Liverpool, the fans of Liverpool. He's just looking to cash right in. But the fans stood up and said, enough's enough.
Well, that's great. I mean, I lived in England for a while, and I know how obsessed and excited and happy and all that they are.
And it's part of their weekly tradition, right? I mean, it's the Saturday 3:00 game, and they'll get on trains in the morning and head up to these away games. But once you make the away game in Italy and Rome, who's going to get on those planes, right? It's not going to be your average worker.
Wow. This is it's significant in itself, but it's also significant as another example, like something that we should be concerned about. Even, perhaps Americans are saying, well, we don't care about, soccer in Europe or whatever. I mean, I know there are a lot of Americans who do, but.
Sorry to interrupt, Doctor. Brian Trasher, Republican strategist, I'm going to admit to the Zoom room.
Okay.
David.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Brian Trasher.
Trasher.
Trascher. Correct.
Okay.
His audio is connecting.
Hi, Brian.
Hello.
Okay. Oh, there you go. There you are. Okay. Hi, welcome to the show. I'm Dr. Carole, sitting in for John Tobacco on Liquid Lunch.
How are you?
I'm good. And with you, you can see, is David Eisenbach.
How you doing, Brian?
Hey, how are you?
We were just actually finishing up talking about the soccer leagues, and I was starting to say that there's even a more global, a more worrisome impact of that, in that the global elite apparently are getting much more clear about what they want to have happen, much more outrageous, stepping out there, aggressive actually, in putting their agenda out. And this is an example of it.
This is a perfect example. And one of the scary things is when you look at the memo from these teams that announcing this new league, they repeated COVID over and over again, that COVID was their excuse for screwing their fans.
Wow.
And these fans saw right through it. Anybody who actually knows anything about what's going on in the world's economy could see right through it. And they said, no, we're not going for it. And they shot it down.
Well, that's good. Brian, do you have anything to comment on that particular topic?
Well, look, I'm a big soccer / European football fan. And one thing I know is that no matter how rabid and insane Americans get for our NFL and our college football, it pales in comparison to the way people in basically every other country except the United States feels about soccer. But particularly in Europe, uh, th- those fans are the last people on earth. Like if I ever wanted to go to war with another country, I would just hire soccer fans from Europe instead of an actual army. If you've ever like gone and drank with these people at the pub before the game and then walked over with them and all that, I'm not surprised. I'm actually very surprised that these teams thought they could pull the wool over this group. They're lucky that they didn't pull like a Minneapolis style burn down the city. They probably staved that off barely by letting the deal collapse at the last minute.
Okay. Well, talking about things collapsing, let's move on to the next topic of mix it up, which is Biden announcing that U.S. Biden announces U.S. greenhouse gas emissions goal are the city's moral imperative. Whenever I get my tongue twisted whenever I hear anything about greenhouse gases or global warming. I mean, I don't know how you guys think, and obviously we want to hear, but there is no proof that global warming is happening. I mean, there is no proof. Yes, the ice cubes are melting and all that, but there are changes in the earth over centuries and millions of years, actually, and there is no proof that this is happening more and to the extreme, at least, that Biden and the other people who are going crazy about this are saying. At least that's my opinion. Brian, what would you like to say about that?
Yeah, so, going back to when I was in grade school, they talked about, back then it was the ozone layer that was going to kill us. And we had to get rid of aerosol cans and things like that. To my knowledge, we still have a lot of aerosol cans, and there's still no hole in the ozone layer. I've been hearing about global warming for about that long too, and how the polar bears were going to go extinct and all the icebergs were going to melt everywhere, and we were all going to die. And Al Gore said that right after he created the internet in the 90s, that if we didn't do something in the next 10 years, we were all going to be dead. I think that's been 20 something years now. Listen, we do have to take care of the planet. We do have to take care of our wildlife and our animals and our water and keep it clean so we have clean drinking water. We can't just allow companies to pollute the planet. I am all for keeping. I'm an avid outdoorsman. I'm a sailor. I like to fly. I like being outdoors. I want it all to be clean and healthy. But this whole idea of man-made global warming that's been debunked by real scientists, millions, well, I'd say a bunch of times, millions is a euphemism, is just all it is just a way for the smaller countries in the world to get the United States to pay for the pollution that's largely caused by India and China. By the way, every single, like the Paris Climate Accord and all these other types of treaties and agreements that come along never make India and China pay for anything, and they're the world's largest polluters. I'm all for the U.S. kicking in to help clean up the world, but we're not going to foot the bill for the entire world, and we're not going to take advice from some 13-year-old little Goldilocks girl over that little Nordic chick who yells at everybody all the time and has no scientific education at all. That's the preeminent expert on global warming, is a 13-year-old girl, Greta Vance, whatever her name is.
Yes, Greta Thunberg.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I agree. I mean, I certainly, absolutely, we do need to take care of our wildlife and the animals that are going extinct and the water pollution. I totally agree with that. But there's a difference between taking care of our planet and these things, the forests, and so on, that are being plowed down, cut down, the Amazon, all of that. But I think people are using, just like with with the soccer, people are using excuses, to cover up their real agenda.
Yeah.
David, would you like to comment on
that?
Well,
the Earth is getting warmer. I mean, that is a fact. The polar ice caps are melting. That is a fact. Whether it is man-made global climate change or not is up for debate. We're not going to have that debate here. But one thing we are certain of, the United States is not the number one polluter in the world, right? And that even if we did go zero emissions, 90% of the world's emissions would still be out there and still be warming the globe. So the question is, for Joe Biden, what consequences are you going to put down on China, on India, for violating whatever they agreed to in terms of cutting back of emissions? Because you cannot take their word for it. And Joe Biden can talk about all the moral imperatives and how much we're going to crack down on pollution in the United States. If you don't crack down on China and India, it's worthless. You can forget about those polar ice caps.
You know, in California, there was something recently in the news about how our wonderful governor, Newsom, another reason for why he should be recalled. He's planning, I don't know if this has been shot down or passed yet. It was just a possible plan that he was going to be introducing, that by a certain year that all Californians have to have an electric car, or at least a hybrid, that you couldn't buy a car that wasn't electric or at least a hybrid. Now that's where it gets into our personal liberties. That's, where it's going too far. I mean, it's one thing about plastic, it's bad enough with plastic and wooden straws and spoons and whatever they've changed that in California. But to tell us what kind of car we should buy or have to buy is a whole different story. Brian, do you want to chime in?
Well, again, we just go back to irony and people who have no idea what they're talking about, like Gavin Newsom. The amount of energy it takes to create and then dispose of the lithium batteries that go into electric cars is much more, exponentially more than the average car would expel in greenhouse gas emissions over a 10-year period. And let's face it, most people don't keep cars 10 years, but let's just say if they did. So it's a net zero proposition. Now, if he's going to make everybody, and I don't live in California, and that's never going to be true, that I would live in California. Love to visit, beautiful place and mostly great people. But, he's probably talking about, government giveaways and the government, they'll probably come up with some kind of way that the government's going to buy everybody an electric car. I just want to put in dibs on that.
Starting with illegals.
918 Spider that costs like $1 million. That's what I want, because that thing's hybrid, and that's the most amazing piece of engineering I've ever seen in my life.
I'm sorry, which one was that?
It's like a Porsche 918 something 9 model. It's like $1 million car, but it's electric. I think it's got some gas component to it, but it's mostly electric.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, all right, what?
Make a car and take over a small country. I'll give him that.
Well, and he's going to buy them and give them out first to all of the illegal aliens that we're allowing in.
Well, yeah, no, actually, I have to go into Mexico and then come back across the Rio Grande, and I'll get my Porsche.
Right. All right, let's talk about Governor Cuomo, who hung up on a reporter who was asking him whether he was going to resign because of all of these women who are coming forward with claims of sexual harassment. David, let's go back to you.
Yeah. Well, I've been saying from the very beginning, impeach him. Don't expect Andrew Cuomo to just knuckle under. He's not going to do it. And if the Senate had the guts, or the legislature had the guts, they would impeach him, go through the trial, right? And guess what? Andrew Cuomo is not the only powerful individual up in Albany who's guilty of abusing his staff, sexually harassing his staff, all sorts of other shenanigans that they're going to accuse Andrew Cuomo of. There are a lot of guilty parties up in Albany, and Andrew Cuomo knows it. And they know it too. That's why they want him to just resign, because they don't want their own pasts put under the microscope.
He's taking advantage of that. Of course, sexual harassment is horrible, but if he was going to be recalled or impeached or whatever, I think it really should be about the thousands of people in the old age homes who he has killed.
Absolutely.
I have been saying.
So let's put that also on the table, but let's also examine how many of these state legislatures run elder care facilities and have been profiting, right, from the state and all of the state's largesse regarding elders, and in fact engaged in abusive behavior towards these elders. I want that record put out on all these state senators and assemblymen who have been on the take, both Republicans and Democrats. So if they want to go there, let's go there and let's blow the whole thing that is this corruption in Albany open.
Hmm. Yes, that kind of explains why a lot of things aren't happening. But I actually think that Andrew Cuomo should be charged with murder and have a criminal trial. That's what I think. Brian, I mean, it's true. He did do that. Brian, want to weigh in?
So, you know, I've been working in professional politics for 23, going on 24 years, and almost every political office, and I don't mean like the title, I mean like the actual physical office that any given politician has with staff and things like that. And of course, the higher up they are, the bigger the office and the more staff they have always been like really toxic environments when it comes to like, you know, like sexually, like for whatever reason, it's almost like working in a restaurant. That environment just lends itself to people being very free and open to talk about sexual things and inappropriately touch each other and make insinuations and whatnot. And I've seen everything from inappropriate to criminal. And I've seen it on, you know, elected officials that were Democrats and elected officials that were Republicans. For some reason, people think when they get elected, that just entitles them to grab every butt cheek in the office or say things that you certainly wouldn't want anybody saying to your daughter. So having said all that, I think David's absolutely right. There's bound, without even knowing any member of the New York legislature, there's bound to be guys and women even possibly who have operated in the same fashion. And you better believe that little Fredo Chris Cuomo is going to, if there's an impeachment trial, he's going to be on CNN every night exposing, you know, some kind of whistleblower information about, you know, one of the members of the Senate or House that's playing holier than thou. And I think David's exactly right. They want to avoid that holy war. But there's probably not too many. There's probably a lot of them that profit from the elder care nursing home business and took plenty of donations from that industry. But there's probably not too many of them that are directly responsible for deaths in those types of facilities.
Right. But believe me, if they're going to go after Andrew Cuomo for taking those donations, right?
Yeah,
he's going to go right back at them for taking the same donations from the same people. Right.
But they're going to say, hey, we're not the ones that told
decades-long scam that Albany's been running.
Yeah, and they're going to say, well, we're not the ones that told the nursing homes to take COVID patients and kill a bunch of people. So it's all going to be like, who's the lesser of the evil here?
100%. But that's why the cowards up in Albany in the legislature and in the Senate, why they just want him to go quietly and resign. And Andrew Cuomo is not going to go quietly.
True. And if I'm a powerful, prominent Democrat, I'm trying to get Joe Biden to really weigh in heavy. And what I would do is go to Joe Biden and say, hey, you know what would take Hunter out of the headlines? An impeachment trial of Andrew Cuomo. Yeah. That would take several weeks and nobody would be talking about Hunter.
Here's the problem. Andrew Cuomo was Mario Cuomo's chief of staff back in the 80s. He was in the Clinton cabinet. Andrew Cuomo knows where a lot of bodies are buried, both in Washington, D.C., and New York City, and up in Albany. So no
one. The Clinton, that's a lot of bodies.
Not even Joe Biden, believe me.
That's right. There are a lot of bodies with the Clintons as well. Yeah. Well,
Dr. We're just about done. We have another guest coming after, so it's up to you to wrap it up.
Okay. All right. Well, let me thank my guests. This is a very interesting discussion. David Eisenbach, historian, professor at Columbia University, and Brian Thrasher, who I didn't quite get your credentials.
Oh, I'm just a kid from New Orleans, you know, no big deal.
Brian Thrasher, yes. He's a Republican strategist, right, Brian?
That's correct. Yeah. Well, you call me Brian Thrasher. I'm the publisher of the skateboard magazine. No, I'm not really. I wish I was.
How could I mess that up? I have been doing all I could to help strategize in my own way for Trump all along. So
look, I don't drink domestic beer, but I'm not that bougie. I don't need a big long introduction.
All right. Well, thank you both very much. It was very interesting.
Appreciate it.
Okay, hi. So we're just waiting for Jonathan to log on in, and he's been talking a lot about the protesters in New York City after the Chauvin verdict.
Now, I don't have, what I have here is nervous about socializing in the office. Here's how
Well,
to break
yeah,
your.
I did want you to talk about that, but I thought that Jonathan would have been really good with the police reform.
That's fine. Could just tell me who he is and
Yeah,
what.
Jonathan Gilliam, and he
Okay.
is a former Navy SEAL and FBI agent.
Okay.
And he's got a podcast out and a book, which you can ask him about. But yeah, he was. I saw him on Newsmax the other night talking a lot about all the protesters wandering around New York City streets,
Oh, cool. Okay. Yes.
unpatrolled, and
Yes.
blocking off 34th Street and things like that. So I'm just waiting for him to log on.
Okay.
In the and while we wait, you could bring up anxiety if you'd like about going back to the workplace and just talk to our viewers about it. That would be fantastic. Any tips that you might want to recommend? I'd love to hear.
Okay, sure. I actually can talk about that. It actually, I've developed a syndrome, or not I have, not me, at least, well, actually, in part, I have developed a syndrome myself. That's how I know about it. But there is a syndrome called reluctant reentry syndrome. And that includes office workers, it includes a lot of people in various kinds of situations. And I talk about 10 different symptoms. So here they are. One, vague discomfort about discovering what the new normal will turn out to be. We don't really, we hear the new normal, we don't really know, what is that going to be? Right now, it seems kind of scary with all of the violence and so on. Then, this is one for me, dreading the pressure of FOMO, fear of missing out as more and more things open. I mean, now all of a sudden you feel like, oh, I guess I should go to that concert, or I guess I should fly, I should take a vacation. We're hearing all about that. Reluctance to get out of your comfy pajamas. I relate to that. Not wanting to face the world after you've let yourself get fat and furry. I won't answer that one. Agoraphobia. Agoraphobia is a fear of being in crowds, a fear that you may need help and that you are not going to be able to get it, a fear that somehow you're going to be annihilated in a sense, being in a crowd, because we haven't been in crowds for so long. Fear of catching COVID-19 because of the new strains. That's kind of a realistic fear. Dreading the awkward, although, in this case, people have it to an obsessive degree. Dreading the awkwardness of reconnecting with friends, family, and colleagues. So it's like I have patients that I still see my patients, but via Zoom. And I was just talking about that with this woman recently about how her office keeps putting the date later and later when they're going to come back. But really, she has been dreading it because she's very comfortable doing work from home. And the idea of interacting again, having the competition, having all of the things that you have at work. I mean, a lot of it is, there's good stuff too, but there's also things that you have at work that you don't necessarily want to get back into. And then no longer having the excuse of lockdown to explain why you don't have a partner. Guilt over releasing your kids back into the scary world. Parents, there are statistics now that parents are, even though some schools are opening or have opened, parents are actually scared about it and are keeping a lot of parents. I heard the latest statistic I heard was 50% in Los Angeles, in any case, want to keep their kids home. And then, which is not good for kids, but it's understandable that parents would be scared of, could they catch it? And last but not least, realizing you don't want to go back to your old life, but not knowing how to reinvent yourself. This actually is a fabulous opportunity for all of us to look at the life we had, our old normal, and decide what was there in that we liked, that we want to keep pursuing, and what is it now that we could actually change? Do we want to move? Lots of people have moved, like from cities and so on, but do we want to move? Do we want to move even to another country? Do we want to change jobs? Some people haven't had, it's not a luxury of choice for some people who have been fired or laid off and so on. But anyhow, these are the kinds of things that we can now have an opportunity to rethink. and to decide, recreate, repaint, like on an easel, on a tableau, repaint what we want our life to look like.
Doctor, this is the reset is really important, I think, for everybody. Jonathan is on. I'm going to admit him in. You can even talk to him about it, how he's handled the pandemic, if you like, and see
Sure.
how it's affected his family. But I'm sure he'll get to you about police reform and everything else. So, Jonathan, this is Dr. Carole Lieberman, America's psychiatrist.
Hi, Jonathan. Jonathan Gillian, a former Navy SEAL and author of a best-selling book that you can tell us all about. And how has the pandemic, and where are you located? Jonathan, can you hear me?
Yes, I am
Hi.
in Long Island right now.
Oh, okay. So how is life for you? I mean, what do you see that this new normal is shaping up to be?
Well, it's a disaster. The reality is the way life is now has little to do with the virus, and has everything to do with incredibly terrible leadership and leftist agenda. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, that is the truth. People have died on a massive scale because of political decisions by people like Cuomo and these other Democrat governors. People have lost their freedom because of these same politicians, and the incompetence at the same time of politicians on the right that have no clue how to do anything because they're just there along for the ride, it seems.
Yes, I know. It seems like now that we really miss, well, some of us, and I'm sure you really miss Trump. I mean, there's no leadership from Republicans. It's like you see all these things happening, like what you're referring to, and we could go on with a list. And I keep waiting. Well, who's going to be speaking up in Congress or anywhere, to say all these things are wrong? I mean, Jim Jordan is good, but then we have Maxine Walters who told him to shut up, or words to that effect. So why are they? There's nobody as loud and as aggressive and assertive and as able to accomplish things as Trump. So yes,
Well, I'll tell you, I disagree with you on that, because the reality is the American people are the ones who are going to save this. It's not going to, even if Trump was still in office, the problem is that the American people are mimicking the way President Trump handled the left when he was in office. And that is, they get embroiled in the emotion, they get drawn into the fight, and the left controls it. And they control the fight. They controlled Trump's fight the entire 4 years he was in office. And, I'm a big Trump supporter. I mean, I would rather have Trump in there right now than anyone else. But the problem is he was consistently drawn into stuff that had nothing to do with what the left's agenda really was. And his energy was spent there. And the American people do the same thing. Look, 80 million people voted for President Trump. If even a quarter of those people stood up and said no more, everything that we see that's wrong in this nation would stop in an instant. But we don't do that. The left does. They stand together in numbers that are adequate to change things, but the right doesn't do that at all. We do not stand up unless we have a figure or a hero that is in the front leading us. And that's the problem, is we have to become a collection, not a collective, but a collection of free minds that stand together. And until we do that, we're going to continue to go down this road.
Well, how are you suggesting that they stand up?
I think we should take the left's playbook and turn it on them, because we are at war. Whether people realize this or not, we're at war. They have subverted the military. The military right now, if let's say Joe Biden and the left just decided to declare martial law and start enforcing socialism and communism in this nation, the only hope we would have, besides our own guns, is the military. And right now, the military is completely subverted. The upper echelon of the military is left. So, we have to take the left's playbook, organize ourselves. The left right now, the Chauvin trial was a perfect example. They could have, with a phone call, made the decision to riot, protest, or celebrate. And they marched and celebrated. They didn't riot after that. And that was coordinated. That wasn't just a circumstance or happenstance all over the country. They showed us that. They talked about it in the Time News article after the election of how they do it, because that's what criminals do. They brag. And if we took that same playbook and we shut cities down and we protested and we rioted and we did it on a regular basis, we would probably start being more uniformed and be able to get things done just like they do.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Like, so you actually think that we should be out there in the streets too, protesting?
Absolutely, it works for them. Evidently, sitting on a couch and fighting on social media doesn't work. I mean, that's all the right does. That's all the conservatives in this nation do. We rally, we pat ourselves on the back, we go home, and we don't do anything because people are afraid to lose their jobs, but they're going to lose their freedom faster than they know. And that, listen, it sounds like I'm, a conspiracy guy or like I'm an angry conservative. The reality is, I get up every morning and limp to the bathroom or to get coffee because of what I've done to my body in support of our Constitution. And I understand the reality of what freedom is all about. And it's about time the American people start realizing it as well, because here's the sad truth is that liberals and conservative, those are titles that have been pinned on us because of the way we look at a problem. But the reality is we're all being played in a game by the left. Yeah. And by the socialists. We're all pawns in their game. And until we realize that, we're all going to march off a cliff just from different directions.
Well, yes, I totally agree with you. I don't think it's it's funny how people who talk about that, like I talk about this kind of thing too, and we always feel, or we used to feel anyway, and to some degree still do, that we have to apologize for saying these things. But the clearer it becomes that this is true, I don't think we need to apologize anymore. I think it's a wake-up call for people. We need to be, saying these kinds of things. I want to make sure that you get in to say something about your book while we're talking.
Well, let me tell you, the interesting thing about my book is when I wrote it, the subtitle is The Art of Awareness in Attack Survival. The whole book is laid out so that people can look at themselves from the attacker's point of view. Instead of just saying, I live in a walk-up in Manhattan and it's scary at night and I'm going to be careful when I go in there. But you literally are given the tactics so that you can understand who would attack, why they would attack you, where it would happen, when it would happen, and the avenue of approach they would take, and the vulnerabilities that they would exploit. If we utilize these tactics and we look at the left and the way that they are doing things, we can identify every single thing that they do. And that's why this book is, it is important. I didn't realize how important it was I knew how important it was, but for different reasons. I was thinking security and awareness. Now I'm thinking the livelihood of our freedom. If people understand this and they apply these tactics when they watch the news or when they look at what happened with the voting, in November, they'll be able to start forward thinking what the left is going to do next, because it's not rocket science. Like any criminal or attacker, it's not rocket science. They hone their skills through years of doing bad things, and that's what's happened.
Yes, and as each thing happens, you can see it's a grand plan. I mean, people seem to be shocked when certain things happen. For example, let's just take the protests that happened when George Floyd was first killed or died or whatever. And then all the other things happened. It seemed like, and then all the protests broke out and all that. People were surprised that there was this much violence. Really, that was planned way before George Floyd lost his life in Minneapolis. And lots of other things that are happening. They are not coincidences or not unexpected. It is the left's playbook that is carrying out their strategy. It would be great to be able to see their playbook. I mean, we know where we're headed towards socialism and communism, but each thing is a step.
I recommend that everybody go back and Google the Time Magazine article, "How We Won the Election." That's what the whole thing is about, is how the left thinks they won.
Yes.
That is a playbook. That's a playbook right there. And that shows you exactly how quickly they can turn things on a dime. What's interesting is something that you just said, which I always find very interesting, is how people are surprised when these things occur, when it's telegraphed every single day. And we all know it. We know what's happening. But people are also freaked out when they die at 70 years old. They're like, I can't believe this is it. This is the end. Well, every single person that individual has ever known or would have known has died and will die. But yet human beings are still surprised by this. Yeah. If that's the case, then it's not a surprise to me that we bury our heads in the sand and ignore the reality of freedom being taken away. And we're surprised by it when it happens. I mean, we need to start being smarter about life in general, about the reality that we're born and that we die, accepting those facts and accepting the fact that freedom is something that you win or you get. And then if you don't defend it, you will lose it. And we live in this era now where we are so afraid of losing a pension or getting in trouble that we as a nation have just allowed enemies to do what they never could have done before. Before they would have had to go to war with us. Now we just sit back and we complain ourselves, into oblivion. And, we saw this in Germany. We've seen this in other locations in Russia where people are oppressed and they end up marching onto a train like they did in Germany, thinking that this might get better or this might be the end of this oppression. And they march themselves on a train, which takes them to their death. We are literally right there.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think part of the problem is, like I know when I was going to school, elementary school and junior high school and all of that, even college, that we were taught the real history, had a kind of a view of America, the greatest country, which of course we still believe, but we kind of took it for granted in a sense. I think a lot of people took it for granted that our liberties would always be there. And now, when you look at what is being taught in school, even as far back as elementary school, kids are learning to hate this country. So this is making it, I actually hadn't realized that the degree of it until this past year of how inculcated these things are in teaching, 9-year-olds about these things, to hate America, that we're racist. And so it's no wonder that now the left is able to make all these things happen because they've been teaching these kids things for years.
It is, you're absolutely right. And when we see things like what happened in Ohio, where, I was on Fox News today and I wasn't on Fox, I was on Newsmax. I don't know how I made that mistake, but so we don't go on Fox anymore. It's too far left. But the reality is, when they were showing the video of that shooting, that police officer shooting that woman with a knife, that 16-year-old girl with a knife, when they played that in slow motion, my comment was that this officer made a life and death decision whether or not to use use of deadly force, to understand what the imminent threat was. At the same time, this girl was running at another girl with a knife. There's a guy just to the officer's right that's kicking a girl that's on the ground in the head. And this officer walks right into this and in an instant has to make this decision. And the reality is, when it comes to this, he made the right decision. He saved this other girl's life. He eliminated the threat that was terrorizing that area at that point in time. And what happened? You go on social media, you turn on the television, and they make it sound as though, hey, this is just another white cop shooting a black person, an innocent 16-year-old girl. You go on MSNBC, they show videos of her fixing her hair and doing makeup tutorials. Well, I don't care if she was a choir girl in the church. She had a knife and was trying to stab someone else. Yes. And the officer did what he needed to do. It had nothing to do with black and white. But people are so indoctrinated that they will go on and they will argue and call me a racist because I'm pointing out facts. And quite frankly, to tell you the truth, I don't care anymore, because the only people we get canceled by or from is the left. If you get canceled, it's the left is canceling you, so the left doesn't have to look at you or deal with you. And I quite frankly am tired of it. I don't care anymore. And I'm going to say exactly what the truth is. There's not systemic race in this nation. There will always be some sorts of hatred or racism, no matter what. If there's a short person and a tall person, there's eventually going to be somebody that doesn't like the other person based on how they look. That's just human nature.
Well,
and
from fear. I hate to cut you off because this is all so interesting, but we've kind of come to the end of the show. And so I would like to thank you, Jonathan Gilliam. And again, your book is called The Art of Awareness. And thank you so much. These were things that absolutely need to be said.
You got it. Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. So they can go pick that up anywhere books are sold.
Okay. Yes, I saw the sheep in the back. Okay. That's good.
Right there. All right. Thank you.
Okay. And thank you all for watching. You have been watching Liquid Lunch. I am Dr. Carole sitting in for John Tobacco, and he will be back. So thank you.